Alright, y'all, welcome back to another one. Today we got Cosgrove. In a minute, we got the video that will have you seriously questioning the NBA going forward. Before we get into the video, make sure y'all hit the button and subscribe. Let's go and check this out. Let's see, haven't seen the Cosgrove video in a minute. Cosgrove. How the music about to start.
I've learned a long time ago that one of the stupidest things you can do as an NBA fan is take things at face value. I'm not saying you should think everything is a lie, but you know what they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. And I refuse to let them pull the wool over my eyes. Throughout the years, we've seen some sketchy activity leading up to the NBA draft lottery. Activity that seems to suggest that maybe the lottery is just all for show. You probably remember.
Qualden says Magic Johnson assured him the Lakers will keep their top third pick. Anthony Davis spotted wearing a Hornets hat before the NBA draft lottery photo. Dikembe Mutombo tweets a premature congratulations to 76ers for winning the #1 pick.
Remember these slip-ups, but there is one premature celebration, so to speak, that no one ever seems to talk about, and that I think is equivalent to these. Heading into the 1997 NBA draft lottery, there were two things that people were almost certain about: Tim Duncan going #1, and the Boston Celtics being the team that would have the privilege to take him come June, as they had the best odds of landing the #1 pick that year. Even Tim Duncan himself thought it was a foregone conclusion.
I remember with the draft order. I remember sitting in my buddy's house watching it all go down, and the assumption was I was going to Boston. In my head, I was going to Boston. I just kind of knew it. And as the picks work out, the last three where it's Boston, Philly, and San Antonio, and then Boston goes third. And I remember getting up from my couch and standing on the table watching the TV, like, holy crap, I'm not going to Boston. Like, it was like in my head, that's where I was going. They're just percentage chances.
Well, he should have known that he wasn't going to Boston even before he sat down to watch the lottery, as there was a clue that he should have caught a couple days prior.
So Pop called me a day or two before the lottery happened. Again, in my head, I was already dead set on understanding that I'm going to Boston, like percentage-wise. I was going to Boston. Nice to meet you, or nice to hear from you, or whatever. And just kind of set it off to the side and didn't even think about it again. Third pick came, and Boston came off the board, and then I was standing on top of a table. It's like, what the hell is going on here?
Nobody thinks it's kind of odd that Greg Popovich called him before the lottery even happened? I'm pretty sure that's what Duncan said, right?
So Pop called me a day or two before the lottery happened.
My question is, why would Pop even feel the need to call him if the lottery didn't even happen yet? Well, perhaps he was overly excited and couldn't help himself because he already knew the results. Or I should say he had just found out that the NBA would be giving it to him. And I will never understand how Duncan didn't immediately put two and two together back when that phone call went down.
Nice to meet you, or nice to hear from you, or whatever. And just kind of set it off to the side and didn't even think about it again.
We all know about how Mark Cuban strongly believes that the 2006 NBA Finals were rigged against the Mavericks, but he recently just revealed another time his Mavericks may have gotten screwed over, well, at least in an indirect way, which in his opinion altered the 2007 NBA playoff picture. In the 06-07 season, the Mavericks won 67 games, but ended up losing to the 8-seeded Warriors in the first round. To most fans, that upset is one for the ages, but Mark Cuban argues that Golden State should never even have had the chance to pull it off, and that without the help of Tim Donaghy, the Warriors might never have made the playoffs that year.
How much did you hate us in 07? Get it out.
That was the Tim Donaghy year.
No question.
Right? So, here's something you probably don't know. There was a game y'all played against the Bulls, and you guys had Andris Biedrins, right?
Yep.
And it was a game that ended up going into overtime. Biedrins is in the defensive three, right? Sitting there. Tim Donaghy reaches out, pushes him out of the paint. Literally pushes him out of the paint instead of calling D3. Now, it was a tie game. If it was if they had called that D3, right, then
Gordon.
What ref is grabbing you?
If they had called that D3, right, game,
What ref is
if it was
grabbing
D,
you right
if
there?
and
They're not gonna. Who
if
grabs
they
and
had called
helps?
that D3, right, Ben Gordon goes to the line, right? 80-some% free throw shooter, makes that three. Now you guys got a foul, and that's you guys just barely made it in. If he calls that the other way, you don't make it into the playoffs at all.
Wow.
At all, right? So that was number one, right?
Now, it's one thing to read or hear about the Tim Donaghy scandal, but to actually see a specific moment of him doing something sketchy in plain sight is kind of crazy. He tried to be very subtle about it so we wouldn't notice, but Mark Cuban, along with this person who posted this video 16 years ago, apparently did, which again is a moment that Cuban believes eventually ended up screwing them just as much or even more than the Bulls that night in the long run. A domino that helped the Warriors barely squeeze into the playoffs, allowing them to go on to embarrass the Mavericks, something that still eats away at Mark Cuban to this very day, as he considers it to be a big what if.
You guys just barely made it in. If he calls that the other way, you don't make it into the playoffs at all.
Which takes us to another example where some unfair assistance was provided in order to win a game, in hopes that we wouldn't realize it. We've seen several instances where people took their hatred for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls a little bit too far.
It's crazy, man. It made no sense. But you got Michael Jordan was a bamboozled about the Chivas fan without a mom hoax, and yet Utah Jazz Pizza give Michael Jordan food poisoning.
With the NBA Jam creator,
you never know. Shoot, people they want to get past somebody that maybe been that part
being one of them. The rivalry between the Chicago Bulls and the Detroit Pistons back in the late 80s and early 90s was extremely intense. And when NBA Jam debuted in 1993, people became suspicious that the game might have been biased against the Chicago Bulls. I say that because by the time this game came out in 93, the Bulls were on top of the NBA world, with the bad boy Pistons no longer relevant, something that the NBA Jam designer was kind of salty about and allowed it to affect his integrity. In 2008, Mark Turmel spoke publicly about a secret code he put into the game, as he figured that he could no longer hide, admitting that he made sure to stack the odds against the Bulls, given that he was a huge Pistons fan. He made it so that in a close game between the Bulls and the Pistons, any last-second shot the Bulls attempted would miss badly.
Being from Michigan originally, I'm a big Detroit Pistons fan. Making this game in Chicago during the height of the Michael Jordan era, there was a big rivalry, the Pistons and the Bulls. But the one way that I could get back at the Bulls once they got over the hump was to affect their skills.
Oh my God, you do that to them in a game?
In NBA Jam. And so I put in special code that if the Bulls were taking last-second shots against the Pistons, they would miss those shots. And so if you're ever playing the game, make sure you pick the Pistons over the Bulls.
Saying that the mystery surrounding around LeBron James' biological father being a tad bit confusing would be a massive understatement, as it's always been a question that many fans have been curious to know the answer to. Google will tell you that Anthony McClellan is his real father. Various websites all say the same thing, as if it's a matter of fact. I don't know about you guys, but this is definitely something I'm not going to just take at face value. I mean, I'm not saying it's not possible or anything like that. There does seem to be a strong case that he could be, but to act like it's definitive is a little crazy to me, especially because I really wanted to touch on this theory and would hate for it to go to waste. First of all, when it comes to Anthony McClelland, there isn't a whole lot of information on him other than the fact that it's believed that he had some sort of relationship with LeBron's mother back in the day. Another name that has been floating around throughout the years is Roland Bivens. Some people even say that Bivens and McClellan is the same person.
They really think that Roland is the father.
Roland Bivens was a star at Central Howard High in the early 80s, a few classes ahead of Gloria James. The All-City player and member of the 1980-81 state championship team ran in the same circles as Gloria, and friends say they dated. Although not as tall as LeBron, number 24 Roland reminds a former coach of the chosen one.
Now there is a man that inserted himself into this whole thing, assuring that he's LeBron's father.
What sometimes happens to people who become very successful in athletics or entertainment, if they have a parent whom they haven't known throughout their life, or they've disappeared, that parent resurfaces when the fame and the money comes in.
That pretty much describes Lester Stovall, who randomly decided to pop up out of nowhere and sue LeBron, claiming to be his father.
You're suing LeBron and his mom to prove that you're the dad, but you're asking for millions of dollars. You took a DNA test, right? You took a paternity test, and it came back and said 0% chance of paternity, but you're not trusting the results?
No, I'm not, unfortunately.
So you think there's a conspiracy by LeBron James
I
and
don't
his
even
mom
see
to
it.
make sure that no
I don't
father
see it.
ever emerges into
I
his
see it
life?
more in that other NBA.
Well, I've said that there's been
The other NBA
there was an
player from back
opportunity
then.
since it was
I
not
forgot his
designed to be
name.
tamper-proof, and there
Oh
are
my God.
indications.
He
that
played
there
on. I
was
think he played on
motivation.
Cleveland.
I've also heard a
Yeah,
theory
right
involving
there,
Nate
yeah.
Thurman, as I'm sure you guys have as well, who was actually born in
I've seen
Akron,
that,
Ohio.
yeah.
Everyone I just mentioned are the
seen that one
usual
too.
suspects that we always talk about, but there is one theory that I've never even heard before
I've
until
seen Buddy, I've
recently,
seen that
and I
one.
have to say, it's pretty interesting. I came across this comment on Reddit the other day that basically suggests that Bernard King is LeBron's father, and that the reason King never said anything was because LeBron's mom, Gloria, was 16 at the time. Now, the most damning part of this post is at the bottom, and it's pretty much the main reason why I'm even giving this attention at all. He goes on to say, and where was Bernard King 9 months before LeBron's birth? Dropping 19 and 10 on the Cavs in Cleveland. The people in the comment section were losing their minds, but before I joined them, I wanted to make sure that it checked out first. So I typed in the New York Knicks 1983-84 season, which was the team that Bernard King was on when LeBron was born. And would you look at that, he was right. Bernard King was in Cleveland dropping 19 and 10 on the Cavs exactly 9 months before LeBron was born. I mean, if you do the math, it is theoretically possible, as Bernard King now becomes a new potential suspect when it comes to possibly being LeBron's father. Well, at least in my head,
That's
he does.
crazy. We trying to figure out all these different dads. That's crazy. You really don't. They don't know. They got all these different options, but you don't even know who actually will be his pops. What the heck is this, man? LeBron is being a goat over here, and we don't even know what his dad is. He's all them checking it out pretty good, and you don't know who is it. What the heck, man? Hey, y'all, like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one.